global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, I'm here in Strasbourg, but I was amazed that last night Theresa May gave a very big speech in the Mansion House in the city, and she really went for Russia, she went for Putin, and she went for, and it's the big agenda, of course, in America, and it's been talked about too in the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister seems to believe that Putin has been seriously interfering in our electoral process. Here was the Prime Minister last night.
We know what you are doing, and you will not succeed, because you underestimate the resilience of our democracies, the enduring attraction of free and open societies, and the commitment of Western nations to the alliances that bind us. Russia can, and I hope one day will, choose this different path. But for as long as Russia does not, we will act together to protect our interests and the international order on which they depend.
We know what you are doing. So the Prime Minister is absolutely clear. She seems to believe that Putin, the Russians, did interfere in the American elections. Perhaps she also believes they interfered in Brexit. And of course, this is something that Ben Bradshaw, Labour MP for Exeter, believes very strongly indeed. When it comes to interference in referendums and in elections, I have to say, less than convinced that Russia played a significant role at all. I have a feeling somebody else out there is playing a far bigger role. This was me this morning in the European Parliament in Strasbourg.
The use of money and the influence it may have had on the Brexit result or the Trump election has reached a level of virtual hysteria. Just last week, the Electoral Commission in the UK launched an investigation to find out whether the Leave campaign took offshore money or Russian money. This came about as a result of questions asked in the House of Commons by one Ben Bradshaw, somebody linked to an organisation called Open Society. I just wonder, when we're talking about offshore money, when we're talking about political subversion, when we're talking about collusion, I wonder whether we're looking in the wrong place.
And I think we are looking in the wrong place. I'll tell you why. Because there's a man called George Soros out there, and George Soros is a multi-billionaire. He's been one of the most successful fund managers, hedge fund managers in history. He's the guy who the older ones may remember helped to break the bank when Britain was part of the exchange rate mechanism by selling sterling short, and we crashed out of the exchange rate mechanism. He's very, very rich, born and raised in Hungary in difficult circumstances. He's lived in America for most of his life. He is worth a very, very great deal of money. And yes, he has this organisation called Open Society. Now, when I talk about money, let me just tell you how much money George Soros has given to Open Society. He's bequeathed them $18 billion. Yeah, not million, $18 billion. And in terms of influence in the European political process, he already has an office in Brussels with 10 accredited lobbyists. His organisation boasts that they had 42 meetings with the European Commission last year. He has a list of friendly MEPs, and there are 246 of those. And he is very active in fighting against governments in Hungary and Poland. He's a big believer that we're all citizens of the world. He believes in free movement. He supports organisations like the European Union. And I think if anybody is influencing elections and referendums by the use of money and lobbying, it's not the Russians, it's George Soros. But of course, it brings us perhaps to a bigger question. Ultimately, do you think there needs to be more transparency in politics? And I've written today to all those MEPs to say, please tell me, have you or organisations you're part of ever received money from George Soros and Open Society? How many meetings have you had with their lobbyists and representatives? How many times have you met George Soros itself or been to an event at which he's speaking? And I'm asking those questions because they're the questions that are being asked of me every single week apropos Russia. You may have heard. According to some, I'm a person of interest to the FBI. In fact, the Sunday Guardian Observer edition a few weeks ago suggested that I was the centre of a spider's web, that somehow I was the link between Assange, Putin, Trump. I know, for my own part, that it's all rubbish, but I really wonder, I don't think Soros is necessarily doing anything wrong. What he's doing is using his vast wealth, his huge fortune, to use his influence, the political policies that he believes in. But is it transparent? I don't believe that it is, and I think we need to have a bigger debate on the whole thing. So tell me, please, do we need more transparency? If you agree with that, call me on 0345 6060 973, or maybe you think it's irrelevant, because nobody influences my vote. I make up my own mind, in which case text to 84850, or maybe you think the sheer amount of fake news out there has reached fever pitch, in which case, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC, and you can watch me here from this amazing building here in Strasbourg, and you can comment on Facebook too. And my first caller is Daniel from Enfield. Daniel, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Well, I'm quite concerned, to be honest with you, because there's been news about the Russians with affecting the result of the US elections and helping your BFF get into the White House. And,
right. Very good. No, very good. Go on.
And, so if we're hearing now that apparently they were working to try to affect the result of Brexit, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, Uncle Nige, but I think we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and run another one. Until whoa down there, Daniel. Whoa down there. The fact that one MP, Ben Bradshaw, and by the way, Ben Bradshaw is a member of, you've guessed it, George Soros's Open Society. He's part of that organisation, and he is making the accusation. In fact, he basically said that Aaron Banks was effectively a Russian agent. He said it in Prime Minister's Questions, using parliamentary privilege the other week, and he's pushed very hard, and the Electoral Commission are now launching another investigation into leave.eu. I say another one because there have been several already. So don't jump the gun, Daniel. Just because one Labour MP makes this accusation does not mean it's true, does it? No, I was going to say, because obviously this has come from Theresa May, this information about the Russians, and as we well know, a lie never passes her lips. We know that. She's the most trustworthy, honest woman I've ever met. So, if she says that the Russians had some sort of input into our EU referendum result, then we should take her on face value, because, she always tells us she's straight with us all the time, and
well, Daniel, I have to say, in one way you're right, because the vicar's daughter can't lie, because she couldn't lie to Ian Dale 5 weeks ago, could she? When Dale said, "How would you vote if there was a referendum tomorrow?" and she couldn't bring herself to say she'd vote leave. So maybe she does tell the truth. And let's be honest, she wasn't specific about the UK referendum. She was general, and she said, "We know what you're doing as far as Putin's concerned." So you can draw, I guess, whatever inference you want from it. But are you saying, Daniel, that if it did turn out that some Russian money had been involved in the British referendum, that the whole thing would need to be run again?
No, not really, not at all. I mean, no one. I love the way that the media is very, very selective on what they decide to put out. No one talks about Obama when he was telling us that we should remain. We should vote to remain, because if we don't, we'd be at the back of the queue. I love the way they decide to pick one side. It's an agenda. We can see it. End of the day, this is just the powers that be, the people that pull the strings. I mean, this is just propaganda. Let's be brutally honest. You know that. I know that.
No, well, Daniel, I was chased, Daniel. I was chased down the corridor last week. I went to the Web Summit in Lisbon, and the New York Times chased me down the corridor as I was leaving to get my plane back to London. And they kept saying, did I think the Russians had interfered in Brexit? And I stopped and said no. But I tell you what, son, the Americans interfered in Brexit because Obama came and told us we had to vote to remain. And I wonder, maybe there's nothing wrong with people like George Soros using their money and using think tanks to tell us what we should think. But I think, Daniel, the argument here is transparency. The argument here is we need to know who's spending the money, who's backing the think tanks, who runs the media, who owns it. I think that's what the public deserve, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're never going to be told. They tell us what they want us to know. That is it. The system, as we have it right now, is a corrupt system. It is. You know that, I know that, and people are starting to wake up to that fact. And they can try all they like to try to spread propaganda and brainwashing. And I will say about this one, it's not their best. I'll give it a D-, and I'll say I'd add a little thing to it. They must try harder because it ain't the best one they've tried. It's just nonsense. It's a non-story because they don't like the result that. And I'm not someone who says either way. I didn't vote in the referendum, but I believe that we could leave the European Union, but not with the political class that we have in place. You can't have a woman who doesn't even believe in something.
Oh no, I know. I agree with that. Daniel, I agree with that, but that's a separate argument. But we're talking here about money, power, influence. The whole world, including the British Prime Minister, are talking about the Russians. I decided today to lob in George Soros. And when you think that Open Society has been bequeathed 18 billion, I mean, it's just a mind-blowing sum of money. And I was looking at their figures this morning. They spent 70 million euros campaigning and lobbying in Europe last year. There is nobody on the international stage that even comes close in terms of money and the attempt to influence opinion than George Soros. Doesn't mean that he's wrong to do it. I think actually he's entitled to do it, but I think all of us need to know the truth. Daniel, thank you. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The Prime Minister last night accused Russia of meddling in elections, hacking Western governments and pursuing its interests, quotes, at any cost. As she warned Vladimir Putin, we know what you're up to. Rev in Ilford.
What she's trying to do, actually, is detract our attention, and it's used as a smokescreen to cover up her ridiculous government and where they're failing.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
This weekend it's the North London Derby as Arsenal take on Spurs at the Emirates on the Sky Sports Premier League channel. Who will win the bragging rights? Upgrade today for this weekend's action. Plus, get more top clashes like the Manchester and Merseyside derbies. Live only on our new dedicated Premier League channel. Now £18 a month. New to Sky? Sky TV starts from £20 a month. Search New Sky Sports. New Sky TV customers, £20 setup fee, 18-month contract. Cancellation requires 31 days notice.
Antibiotics, we're wonderful pills, but don't ever think we'll cure all of your ills. So every time you feel a bit under the weather, don't always think that we can make you better. Take us for the wrong thing, that's dangerous to do. But when you really need us, we could stop working for you. So please don't end up paying the price. Always take your doctor's advice.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk. Take your doctor or nurse's advice and keep antibiotics working.
Are electric cars okay for long journeys? Are there any tax benefits to having them on my fleet?
Are they easy to drive?
Can they go off-road?
Do they keep their value?
Are they any good on motorways? Can you drive them at night?
Can they go up hills?
How many photocopiers can I fit in the back of one?
Got questions about adding electric cars to your fleet? Get the answers at goultralow.com.
Air France. France.
La France
is in the air.
Looking to sweep someone off their feet? Air France can whisk you away to the most romantic city in the world. Paris.
Air France. France.
La France.
Is in the air.
With flights from London Heathrow starting at £45 one way, it would be heartbreaking to miss out. Simply visit airfrance.co.uk and book by 20th of November. C'est magnifique. Terms and conditions plus credit card surcharge apply.
That's great. And now the bride's parents.
So it just clicked. I don't develop film in a darkroom anymore. Why do I still print invoices and bank checks? Now I pop my PayPal Here card reader in my camera bag or email an invoice with a link that gets me paid in a flash.
With a PayPal business account, you'll spend less time chasing money and more time earning it. Search PayPal business account and put yourself in the picture.
PayPal's my perfect partner.
Big smile!
Sign up is free. Terms, card reader and transaction fees apply.
This is LBC, live from Strasbourg, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Prime Minister Theresa May tells us that the Russians are meddling in elections all across the West. She says, we know what you're doing. I'm pretty sceptical about that. But even if they have meddled in elections, I think that is as nothing compared to George Soros's Open Society, because that's where the real big money is. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying Soros is wrong at all. I disagree totally with what he stands for, but I am saying I think we need greater transparency. And that's why I'm going to be writing to over 250 MEPs to ask them, have they taken any money from George Soros? And on text and tweet, I get Nigel, why don't you start talking about the Illuminati, etc.? Well, no. I'll leave that to David Icke. You become a serial conspiracy theorist, says Chris in Yorkshire. No, there's no conspiracy here, Chris. I've looked at the accounts. George Soros' Open Society spent 70 million euros last year lobbying and campaigning in Europe. I'm not suggesting it's wrong, but I do think we need to know about it. Dean says, is this a joke? The French and Germans told us to vote to stay in the EU. Obama flew here to tell us that. Isn't that meddling? Yes, it is. In Obama's case, Dean, it's meddling big time. Now, my next caller is called Jonathan, and he's calling from Santa Catarina in Brazil. And he's a new caller to the show. Jonathan, good evening. Or is it good afternoon there?
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's good afternoon, Nigel. How are you doing? First time caller. I never usually call in, so it's quite exciting.
I'm very pleased that you are, and we have a very international dimension to this show. And indeed, this debate, Jonathan, is international, isn't it? It's about big global money being used to influence how we think and how we vote. And I'm not suggesting that it's necessarily wrong, but I do think a lot of it has been brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, and I'm just calling actually. It's actually to do more with kind of what Theresa May was saying, really. I work in cybersecurity, and she's obviously saying she knows 100% that it was, Russian government is meddling in election. That's 100% what we always hear from all sides. So I work in cybersecurity. We do penetration testing all the time, and leaving a digital footprint is just the most basic mistake ever. Leaving it back to you, it's the most basic mistake. Like teenagers stealing credit cards. They don't leave a digital footprint. Any non-technical person can set up a proxy and a VPN in less than 15 minutes. So the fact that she knows, and she says she knows, I just think it's a load of rubbish, really, because she can't know. Because if it was honestly a state-backed organisation, they would not make that mistake.
So, Jonathan, okay, I on the technical side of this, I absolutely bow to your vastly superior knowledge to me. But why did she make that speech then? Because it seemed to come completely out of the blue. Why did she say those things?
I know, completely out of the blue, as if she knew with 100%, and she's even been misled by other people in her government. But there is no way that, especially a government-backed organisation, would make such a basic mistake, because it is the most basic mistake, honestly, Nigel. You could set up a proxy in less than 5 minutes if I sat down and taught you with it. It's something you can do from your own computer, and you can make it look as if you are in Russia, for example. You can do that. So are there some other foreign actors at play? I don't know. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I'm just into kind of facts. And that's the case. It's just ridiculous what she's saying.
So why did she do it, Jonathan? I repeat the point. Why did she join the conspiracy theorists on the New York Times and CNN and everybody else who are absolutely convinced that the only reason Trump won the election was because the Russians interfered. And now Ben Bradshaw is suggesting the same is true of Brexit.
And I would say it's simply because, most of the country, they can't even turn on the printer or a laptop very well, so she has no technical knowledge, so she just basically say what she's told. So she has no idea what she's talking about, really, does she? Just like Amber about end-to-end encryption.
Very good. Jonathan, long-distance caller, brilliant, thank you. He says May couldn't possibly know this because it's easy to hide it. Anyway, Peter is calling from Ipswich. Peter, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to speak to you after...
Nice to speak to you.
Many, many years, yeah. My comment's more to do with George Soros. Being a sort of a bit of a political buff, I've noticed sort of, if you like, Mr. Soros's activities over the years. And the angle I'm sort of wondering is that what his beef is with countries deciding their own nations, if you like, political direction, particularly when it comes to things like immigration, etc. Why is he so interested in having greater diversity? Why is it such an emphasis on, if you like, that kind of more immigration into Eastern Europe, which they're dead against?
Well, Peter, could I suggest, Peter, that it may be because he's 87 years old, all right? He grew up in Hungary. He was adopted, but he did have some Jewish ancestry. And it could be that he saw what happened to the Polish Jews, the Hungarian Jews, the Holocaust, and these horrors, and he's decided that because that was so awful, that if we now open the doors to everybody, the world is going to be a better and simpler and nicer place. It must be, Peter, psychologically something to do with that background, surely.
I think it's got to be, but I think it's also that would be an easy argument for him to make, wouldn't it? I think the other side of the argument, let's play devil's advocate on this one and say, Karl Marx, divide and rule. Wasn't it Karl Marx or was it Clausewitz? One of the two. But if you have a divided society made up of, masses of unchecked migration, then you're going to have a society that is probably easier to manage and govern in many ways. And probably a society that's not so, loses its sense of who they are and potentially becomes better consumers. Now, being a cynic, I'm thinking a better consumer spends more money and is probably easier to manage. Isn't that... Well,
I mean, Soros, Peter, is not a retailer. I've suggested maybe why he thinks the way that he does. But, that's rather like saying because the rich have got too much money, we should become communist. It doesn't always work. The best intentions, the road to hell is paved with them. But, Peter, imagine you were worth $25 billion like George Soros. Would you want to change the world?
Well, possibly not, actually. I'd quite like to. But I generally would think that I would try and do some good. Now, I don't really see that trying to force a country, if we take Hungary or Poland, I know he's been particularly active in trying to force the Hungarian government into a very difficult position on one or two matters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he has absolutely no rights to do that. And I think it's just a case of, if we were taking it down to even its most basic level, a guy with a lot of money being so influential, are we actually saying that money counts to the point where, a nation-state democracy doesn't matter? So it doesn't matter what the Hungarians voted for, what they want, or what their government wants, that somebody can come in there and, if you like, undermine that particular policy, whether it's immigration or whatever.
Well, Peter, George Soros thinks there is a greater good than nation-state democracy. Whatever the Brits think, whatever Viktor Orban and his government in Hungary thinks, Soros believes there is a greater good. It is the supranational project of the European Union, and it is the migration experiment that's been happening coming across the Mediterranean. That's what he thinks, Peter, for right or wrong. I thank you very much for your call. Darren in Bristol is a real cynic. He says, clearly, the political class are trying to push the Putin agenda to try and make an excuse to have another referendum. Oh, Darren, that really is conspiratorial. But you know what? I think I rather believe in it. Suzanne says on Facebook, the British public cannot be bought or sold, but it is looking like our MPs can. It's starting to look like we need to get rid of the whole lot and start again. Well, Suzanne, what is really interesting, I think, since the referendum is the British public have firmed up in their support of Brexit. The political class are going in completely the opposite direction. Io is calling from Romford. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Nigel. Right, Nigel, I know you're not a silly guy. I don't believe you believe that the Russians haven't been sort of interfering online, you know, technical warfare. I don't think you believe that, right? The other guy that was on earlier, claims to be a cybersecurity expert. Obviously, he's not very good because he can't think outside of the box. I mean, a VPN, we're talking about, that's all child's play. That's like, you know, that's some baby stuff there. I mean, I'm talking about spies inside the Russian government. There's communications. We have MI6, we have MI5, we have the CIA, we have you know, intelligence services, and they have different methods of acquiring information. So if Theresa May says that the Russians have been, you know, interfering, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's more than feasible and it's more than true. And I mean, so there's more than enough sort of reliable sources. You talk about, you know, this fake news thing and this George Soros thing and this InfoWars thing. I've got a friend at work, right? He's a big supporter of you, Nigel, my friend Justin. Me and him are always having it because, you know, we're probably on the either side of the spectrum. He's right behind you in everything you say, and I'm against you. So we're always having this debate. One day I'll watch one of these videos on this George Soros thing. I'll watch one of these InfoWars. Complete nonsense, yeah. It's not facts. It's just all built on speculation, all built...
Ayo. Whoa. I looked at the accounts. He spent 70 million euros last year lobbying, campaigning in the European Union. That is a fact.
Oh, do you know what, yeah? You know what, when it comes to that, as we're talking about facts, I'm not going to dispute that with you because actually I probably sort of went a little bit overboard just then when I said that about the whole conspiracy. I think I was sort of generally...
I tell you what, Io. Can we agree on something to end this conversation? There needs to be transparency on who's spending money, you know, wherever it is. Would that not be the right answer to this?
I agree. Good. I agree. That's right. You're saying, then I think everyone should know about that. And, you know, we can make our...
Absolutely. Io, we will end this conversation with agreement. Give Justin my best. Thank you. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg at 7:30, and time for the news with Philip Chryssikos.
In the last half hour, MPs have voted against the devolved administrations of Scotland and Wales having to give their consent before Brexit happens. It has been defeated by 318 votes to 52. As the EU withdrawal bill continues to be debated in Parliament, MPs have voted in support of repealing the 1972 European Communities Act, which took the UK into the common market. That vote went 318 to 68 in favour of repealing it. A teenage girl is being questioned on suspicion of helping someone carry out an act of terrorism. The 14-year-old was arrested at an address in South London by counter-terror police. A man has been found guilty of illegally importing guns and making homemade bullets for them before selling them onto the criminal underworld. Ammunition made by the 66-year-old from Gloucestershire was found at more than 100 crime scenes, including 3 murders. LBC weather clear across the north this evening and overnight, cloudy elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees. Tomorrow overcast in the morning, brighter by the afternoon, a high of 12 degrees.
LBC travel, there are long delays on the northbound M1 from junction 8 to after junction 10, the Luton Airport Spur Road. 3 lanes remain closed for accident investigation work, and as a result, surrounding routes through Dunstable and Luton are all snarled up. Notting Hill Gate is shut westbound between Palace Gardens Terrace and Kensington Church Street because of an accident. And there's been a crash on Seven Sisters Road. Traffic is taking it in turns to get past the scene at Blackstock Road, while in Kidbrooke, the outside lane is blocked in each direction on the A102 at the Sun in the Sands roundabout because of a crash. LBC Travel, I'm Andy Ivey.
This is LBC.
When the Harrison family had a smart meter installed, they weren't entirely sure whereabouts in the home they'd be able to save energy. But they were determined to get gas and lecky under control. With the help of the handy in-home display, it didn't take long to see which energy guzzlers were costing the most money. Aha! Now gas and lecky don't stand a chance. The Harrisons are determined to keep their energy waste to a minimum. Contact your energy supplier today about getting your smart meter at no extra cost.
At Oak Furnitureland, everyone knows our furniture is 100% solid hardwood.
And it's also up to 50% off.
But most importantly, it's 100% solid hardwood.
Yes, but don't forget it's also up to 50% off.
Don't miss Oak Furnitureland's amazing 2-day sale, where there's a fantastic range of 100% solid hardwood with up to 50% off. Hurry, our 2-day sale must end Tuesday. Order today for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Visit oakfurnitureland.co.uk to find your nearest store.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
Air France.
La France
is in the air.
Looking to sweep someone off their feet? Air France can whisk you away to the most romantic city in the world, Paris.
Air France.
La France
is in the air.
With flights from London Heathrow starting at £45 one way, it would be heartbreaking to miss out. Simply visit airfrance.co.uk and book by 20th of November. C'est magnifique! Terms and conditions plus credit card surcharge apply.
At PlusNet, we say let's hear it for small businesses, the micros that think mega, run by work all day, worry all night warriors. No home life, no love life, no lunch hours or happy hours, only long hours. Our super fast business broadband is for you. Reliable, affordable, with support anytime you need it. Christmas Day, New Year's Day, May Day, May night, whenever, because you guys, you're the future. You make us proud, and you know what? Here at PlusNet, we'll do you proud.
Right now, while you heat up last night's pizza, a rock legend is leaving his dressing room. There's a stadium out there buzzing with anticipation. And the world champion ready for the starting bell. So, what are you waiting for? Buy and sell tickets to your favourite events on StubHub.co.uk. StubHub, your tickets out.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg, only on LBC.
Well, as just reported on the LBC Bulletin, in Parliament not long ago, MPs have just voted on the first set of amendments to the European Union Withdrawal Bill. The amendment from Plaid Cymru's Hugh Williams to make the repeal of the 1972 Communities Act conditional on the government gaining consent from the devolved legislators was defeated by 318 votes to 52. MPs voted to keep Clause 1 of the bill by 318 votes to 68. Clause 1 is a single line saying that the European Communities Act 1972 will be repealed on exit day. So we voted to get rid of the piece of legislation that originally took us in to what was then known as the common market. And much as I'm very unhappy with the concept that we're going to be stuck in some transitional arrangement, paying some ludicrous exit bill, unable to sign trade deals across the rest of the world, I tell you what, we're heading in the right direction. So that's good news. Also significant, a Leave-supporting Labour MP has called on Theresa May to form a cross-party Brexit cabinet in the spirit of Britain's government during World War II. Speaking as MPs began their line-by-line scrutiny of the EU withdrawal bill, Frank Field urged the Prime Minister to follow the example of Winston Churchill back in the 1940s. Expressing his concern at the government's handling of Brexit, the former Labour minister claimed that there has not been the sense of importance or drive or coherence that this issue merits. Hear, hear, I say to that. Having branded himself as a reluctant Brexiteer, Mr. Field added, anyone serious about comparing this historic event to us fighting for our survival in World War II would have followed the move that Churchill made once he took over from Neville Chamberlain. He would have moved from the ramshackle way of existing institutions and he would have established a war cabinet. I believe we need a Brexit cabinet. Small, with the offer to the opposition to be on it, as in wartime, which Mr. Attlee and Mr. Greenwood accepted, that we actually try and have a national interest. Mr. Field spoke as he introduced his amendment to the EU withdrawal bill, which is designed to convert EU legislation into UK law by March 2019. And isn't that actually rather fantastic that Frank Field, veteran Labour MP from Birkenhead, was talking there not as a Labour MP, not as somebody who was part of a political tribe, but somebody saying there is something more important than the colour of the rosette you wear at election time. It is the national interest, and the country has voted for Brexit, and people should come together, whichever party they're from, and fight to make sure we get the best from it. I have to say, Frank Field, 10 out of 10. Goodness me, I wish there was more of that, and more of that feeling and spirit in British politics. But back to Russian influence, Soros influence, transparency. Mike in Finchley is next up. Good evening.
Evening, Nigel.
Hello. So what do you think, Mike? Do we need more transparency? Is Mrs. May right about the Russians? Could I be right about George Soros? Where do we go?
Yeah, so reason why I called is because one of your callers called in, and I'm definitely not calling to necessarily disagree with your caller who's a penetration tester. I'm sure that he's great at his job. But one thing that he said wasn't strictly true, and that is that we don't have the capability to effectively track nation states like this. Now, what he said about proxies is correct. So obviously it's very easy for a nation state to obfuscate their originating IP effectively. But what we actually look at is things like code reuse. So where has this malicious code been used before? And also, let's not forget that we do have the modern day Alan Turets at MI5, at GCHQ, who do hack these proxy servers and also run exit quits for Tor, etc. So we do definitely have the ability to quite accurately say, like, this is who has potentially done this, and look at it like that, really. So the number of
okay, Mike, I have to say, on the technicalities of this, I am completely ignorant and I can't comment. I hear what you say, and yeah, I'm sure we have some very bright people sitting within our intelligence services. But this obsession that Russia interfered in the election, don't big countries, haven't they for decades often interfered in other people's elections?
Yeah, and this is what really gets me, is that people kind of have this inbuilt fear of Russia, but to think that we don't have similar sorts of capabilities and tools, and let's not forget that when a lot of these leaks come out, a lot of the time they originate from the NSA, not necessarily from GCHQ. So with us in Israel and a lot of other countries, we are absolutely up there with the superpowers of the world, without any doubt whatsoever. But I think that Russia clearly have done quite a good job with propaganda. I think there's like I said, an inbuilt fear of Russia, whether that's on a cyber perspective or a physical perspective. And from that, it does leave people feeling worried. But even now, I've just seen some of the propaganda that Russia have put out. And they've actually put out a simulator saying that it's evidence of a US-led extraction, ISIS extraction. And it's just not true. Someone's identified the picture they put out as evidence of the game. So, yes, it is interesting.
Mike, it may prove that Russia had some influence in the American election. I'm not sure that it will. I mean, everyone's obsessing about $100,000 that was spent advertising on Facebook. And the point I was trying to make this morning, Mike, is that George Soros' organisation spent 70 million euros, $90 million, and that perhaps we're looking in the wrong place. That was the point I was trying to make this morning.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that should be looked at. I mean, look, we do need more transparency on where areas are getting funded, and whether that's propaganda from Russia or from anybody, really. I think that 100% it's a key point to make and a very, very important issue, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thank you ever so much for your call. I get by text, whether we like it or not, businessmen influence the way our country is run. Soros made billions from short-selling sterling. We should use these people more often to help run the country, says Ollie. Well, he is trying to run the country, Ollie. He's trying to run the Western world. That's the argument I was making this morning. It doesn't make him a bad person, but surely we need to know about it. I wonder what Mohammed in Oxshott thinks about all of this. Good evening, Mohammed.
Hi, good evening. First of all, I agree.
I've got a real... Mohammed, this line is dreadful. What we're going to do is we're going to get this redialed and get you back after the break. But my next caller, well, I recognise that name. I know who he is. His name is Lembit Opik. He's a former Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament, and he's there in Glastonbury. And he's a friend of mine. Lembit, how are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm very well. What about you, sir?
I'm fine, Lembit. I'm fine. I'm trying to bring some balance to what I see.
You're just gloating. You're gloating because you got your first Parliament tonight.
Well, I know I did, but in a minute we'll do that. But no, I mean, I hear all this stuff about Russia, all right? And it goes on and on and on. And I read The Observer every Sunday to see apparently my incredibly close links with all of Russia. I mean, maybe I drank a vodka once or something. I've no idea. But Lembit, what I'm not seeing is an open, honest debate about George Soros's open society. And I'm trying to give us a bit more of a balanced conversation.
But there's all kinds of... well, I admire and wouldn't for a moment question your willingness and your eagerness to do that about Mr. Soros. I put it to you, there are two slight ironies in this. First of all, I'm in Glastonbury. I work with a motorcycling magazine here, but it couldn't be more British. This is Avalon, where I am, Nigel, probably less than a mile from the top. So I'm surrounded by people who probably did support, in massive majority, a Brexit. But the second point here's the big one, and I'm really going to ask you a question, but you can always throw it back at me. Is it really right or wrong that people like Soros have such influence, or indeed the Russians? You know as well as I do that you like a French Merlot, you like travelling around. You're in Strasbourg now, for crying out loud. What is wrong with people like Soros defending his economic interest in a way which is good for him? And then the big question, what is wrong with everybody in the rest of the European Union carrying on doing that after the Brexit, and therefore leading us to a situation, Nigel, which is no different to now? Economic union by any different name, and freedom of movement.
Do you know,
that's the problem.
Do you know, well, clearly freedom of movement is not wanted. We voted against it in Brexit. It's perfectly clear that Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia are completely opposed to freedom of movement in its current form. But your big substantive point, what is wrong with billionaire George Soros using his money to lobby and campaign for his view of the world? Do you know what my answer to that is? Absolutely nothing. But it needs to be open. Clear and transparent, Lembit. That's all I'm saying.
You only say that because it could be argued, Nigel Farage, that you were instrumental in creating the glorious victory of Donald Trump in America. You were meddling around there. But
well, look, okay, all right. I meddled there. Obama meddled here. The Americans have meddled in elections, virtually every single one in the Western world since 1945. And I've no doubt we'll find out that the Chinese are influencing people. I don't mind big money being used to try and push opinions, but I do think, Lembit, there is a problem with transparency.
Okay, a light point and a serious point here, Nigel. The light point is I feel the ground rumbling here in Glastonbury. It could be the Chinese are building a tunnel underneath Glastonbury. Or could that be paranoia? Maybe. Leading to my serious, at least the Chinaman will get there quickly. But the serious point here is, if what you said is correct, and if the subtext about you having the right to participate in American politics, I do think you have that right, is true, and Soros, as you said yourself, you haven't got a problem with that, that's an economic motivation, then what is really going to change, Nigel, then if and when we actually leave the European Union? And I have to tell you, as I watched the dilution of the Brexit means Brexit argument, and I'm not taking a side particularly on that, it could well be that we end up in exactly the same place with a different name. We don't actually leave at all. We just say that we leave, and that could be the international influence we're talking about.
No, well, I have no doubt that the big international, global, high finance, liberal media lobby are doing everything they can to overturn Brexit. But you know what, Lembit? We're going to fight back because we voted Brexit. There are more of us now that would vote Brexit than did on June 23rd, 2016. Delight to have you on the show, as ever. Lembit Opik, entertaining. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's now 7:47.
Coming up at 8 on LBC. Clive Bull.
An estate agent's report today says first-time buyers need to make some tough choices. Is it true that millennials waste too much money when they could be saving for a deposit?
Clive Bull on LBC.
High quality, affordable kitchens designed in your own home. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
Book your free Room Sense home design visit and we'll measure up, show you samples, create a stunning kitchen design and give you a quote all before we leave.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Book today at roomsense.co.uk.
Glad I brought my scarf and gloves. Thinking ahead, Wilbur.
Huh?
Well, it's like getting home care from British Gas before winter catches you out. For only £12 a month, that's less than 40p a day. Your boiler's serviced every year, and if it still breaks down, we'll fix it. Plus, until the 4th of December, you get a gift card worth up to £50 on most home care products when you buy online. You brought the umbrella? Well, thinking ahead. Not bad for a penguin. Stay a step ahead of winter. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply.
Your journey is always more pleasurable with Aeroflot Russian Airlines. Our young fleet flies to an enormous range of destinations. Come and experience true hospitality delivered by our expert cabin crew and pilots, made even better by the choice of exquisite cuisine served on board. Then just sit back, relax, and enjoy the comfort of our state-of-the-art aircraft. You'll find you've enjoyed yourself before you've even landed. Fly Aeroflot.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
At Oak Furnitureland, everyone knows our furniture is 100% solid hardwood.
And it's also up to 50% off.
But most importantly, it's 100% solid hardwood.
Yes, but don't forget it's also up to 50% off.
Don't miss Oak Furnitureland's amazing 2-day sale, where there's a fantastic range of 100% solid hardwood with up to 50% off. Hurry, our 2-day sale must end Tuesday. Order today for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Visit oakfurnitureland.co.uk to find your nearest store.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Moneyfacts Award 2015 to 2017.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg, only on LBC.
Mrs. May lambasts Putin and says, we know what you're doing. Stop meddling in Western democracy. And I'm a little bit surprised that the Prime Minister said that. And I answered today by saying, well, OK, you can talk about Russian meddling. What about George Soros and the billions he's put into open society, the lobby he's got in Brussels and all the rest of it? And we're debating, should there be more transparency about who is spending money? But tonight, during the EU bill debate, veteran Conservative MP Ken Clarke, staunch Remainer, EU fanatic, but he paid me quite a kind compliment tonight. Let's listen to it.
The idea, which is very popularly put forward by UKIP and others, that it's led faceless grey Eurocrats to produce vast quantities of awful legislation and red tape, is one of the biggest myths of our time. And I pay tribute to Nigel Farage's campaigning abilities. There's absolutely no doubt he's the most successful politician of my generation, because he has persuaded a high proportion of the population that is exactly how it runs, and they're all looking forward to having bent bananas again once we actually repeal this piece of legislation.
Well, maybe Ken's accusing me of meddling. I don't know. Listen, very interesting, isn't it? I've appeared on TV debate programmes, radio debate programmes with Ken Clarke over the years. Very nice fella. enjoy his company very much. Got to have a beer with him after that particular comment. But it shows that you can actually, in a grown-up political world, fundamentally disagree with people, but be polite about each other. And Ken Clarke generally manages to do that. I thought that was really rather a nice tribute. And funny, isn't it? I mean, Ken thinks I'm an obsessive, an anti-EU obsessive, and in a way, you know, it's a fair cop, really, isn't it? And yet he's been, ever since 1961, at the Cambridge Union, a pro-EU obsessive. Had he not been, I think he would have become our Prime Minister. But he did, to be fair, stick to his principles all the way through. My next caller on international meddling and money and a lack of transparency is Jamal, who's calling from Sweden and is a new caller to the show. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I never thought.
Hello there.
Good evening. Hello.
Good evening. So come on, tell me.
Well, I think for me, I'm interested because I think there was a caller that was on before who asked you the question, or no, he didn't ask you the question, but he said that, and I stand by him, that I know for a fact, I can say that, I know for a fact that you don't actually, you know, stand with what you're saying on this radio show, because you're saying, and you're trivializing what Theresa May said yesterday to kind of distract people from, you know, the core issue. And the core issue is that there is large, you know, substantial data and files, you know, court papers proving that Russia has been meddling, you know, with the democratic process in the United States. Now, I think when you make these, you know, assumptions or you speculate, I think the topic isn't what George Soros is doing. I don't think we need to be having that discussion just now. I think we need to be having the discussion of whether Russia did actually meddle with Brexit. Because I can't trust you, Nigel, because you did meddle. You did start a national referendum, got people riled up by using the right language, appealing to the right kind of people that were lost, tired.
Well, what about the truth? What about the truth? What about the truth, Jamal? What? Hang on. For nearly 50 years, the British people have been told, don't worry, your poor little heads. We're just part of a trading arrangement. It won't affect your sovereignty or lawmaking. And as it turned out, the whole thing was a blooming great lie from day one. And I, Jamal, and you can disagree with me, and that's fine. That's democracy. I took the view as a businessman that something needed to be done about it. Not because I dislike Europe. I don't. I never have and I never will. But because I believed we should make our own laws in our own country.
Okay, I respect that. And you said that you decided as a businessman to go in and make a difference, yes? To make a change. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And that's exactly what George Soros decided to do. He started up the Open Society project in 1979. So I don't understand how you're criticising someone that decided to do the exact
I think, I think you've misunderstood me tonight. I have not been criticising the fact that George Soros wants to use his wealth and influence to push his agenda. What I am saying is ludicrous, is that people like you come on the phone to me and suggest the Russians somehow had some massive influence in the American elections or perhaps even Brexit. And I know how much of this is rubbish because of so much of this that's been directed at me. You know, I'm a person of interest to the FBI. I mean, and all this baloney that somehow I'm the centre of the spider's web. I'm the man that links Trump, Bannon, Assange. I promise you, you know, cross my heart, Jamal, it's all a load of old baloney. But even if there was a degree of Russian interference in some way across the West over the last few years, all I'm saying is that Soros's influence was bigger, and I'm only calling for a bit more open transparency about what is being spent and why. And I think that's a reasonable point of view, don't you?
I think for me, as you know, I'm calling from Sweden. I live in Sweden. And you're talking about transparency, yes? In England, we have something, as we know, the Data Protection Act, right? We have a very different, you know, approach and a very different look at data and information. Talking about transparency, why not look at changing the laws within our own country, back home in the UK. Because in Sweden, they have something here known as offentlighetsprincipen. And this is that all information, whether it's public or private, should be made available as long as it's not interfering. For instance, my mobile number is on national records that anybody can Google. My home address you can find anywhere on the internet. So when you talk about transparency, right, you're saying no matter how little or how big Russia played, the fact is they played a part, Nigel. And I think that's the discussion.
Well, maybe they did. Jamal, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. All I can promise you is that as far as I'm concerned, everything people say is a complete load of old nonsense. But I thank you for your point of view, for your call, and making the fact that in many ways Sweden is far more transparent than we are. Hi, Nigel. Why no mention of Aaron Banks alongside George Soros when it comes to spending money on elections, says Lee in Blackheath. Well, you're right. Aaron Banks did spend his money. And why shouldn't he spend his money? As do people on the other side of the argument. I don't mind money being spent. It needs to be transparent. But it is simply crackpot to suggest that the Russians have influenced the West in a big way, and not to mention the fact that George Soros has done far, far more than the Russians have ever done. Doesn't make him a bad person, but it needs to be open and it needs to be talked about. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow at 7. Coming up at 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. So, lots to come between now and 10. At 9, it's the Health Hour. Dr. Snake